and welcome to The Bond. Today we're going to start with understanding a little bit about going to the polls. Now, nobody likes politics, and some people think that voting for our human options are just wrong. So instead, some people want to vote for a cat. Now, can that actually happen? It did happen in 2012. Back in Maine Coon Cats, a cat named Hank actually ran a political campaign for the United States Senate in Virginia. And his mission was to win the seat for the Senate. But he had a tough competition. He had a human Republican and a human Democrat running against him. He did, in the process of raising money for his campaign, actually raise money for the animal rescue organizations. And Hank's campaign actually not only raised money, but he got votes. Although he was not on the ballot, people wrote his name in. So Hank the cat ran as an independent. He was a tie-wearing furball from Springfield, Virginia, and he did net fewer votes than the human candidates, but the Democrat Tim Kaine and the Republican George Allen actually got more votes than Hank. However, Hank understood, and by the end of the campaign, when voting was counted, he actually graciously ceded his election. There were a couple of attack ads that were run against him, and he also had another ad. And because he was a Maine Coon, we are here today to talk to an actual breeder of this majestic breed of Maine Coon cats. And I'd like to introduce to you today Daniel Franken of Noble Maine's Cattery. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, we're so glad that you actually came all the way down here. You are based in California, and you are a breeder who seems to be very dedicated to not only celebrating, but managing the image of these noble breeds.
Very much so.
My first question to you is, are you actually not a cat breeder, but a kingmaker?
So I don't look at myself that way.
You don't. That's very humble of you.
I've never actually looked at myself in that manner. I am more of a happiness maker.
Oh, that is fabulous.
The kingmaker would be Storm here and all of her queens that are part of the Cattery, because it's her babies that are raised and then adopted out by the families. So if anything, I am a support arm for the girls.
That is fantastic and not political at all.
No.
However, before I go on to the next question, I want to share with the audience that Hank actually, back in 2012, had his own political ad, and also an opponent ran an ad against him. It was a true catty attack ad. So here we're going to run both of them for you so that you can check them out. Wasn't that great, having actual cat ads running for politics instead of humans? That brings me to my next question to you. Daniel, Hank for Senate in Virginia, and Stubbs was actually a cat for mayor who ran in Alaska. And in 2017, they had a message that seemed to resonate with a lot of humans. Why do you think so many cat candidates are speaking to people today?
Well, from a political standpoint,
which we understand you are not a political person.
From a political standpoint, what you see in a cat is what you get.
Okay.
There is no one side of Storm here for the camera and another side of Storm behind closed doors. So cats are very true. When they bond with you, when they are out and about, what you see is who they are.
So if a cat were a leader, what characteristics make a cat such a great leader that they actually get a lot of votes? Not quite more votes than a human, but a lot of votes in a political campaign.
And they probably could have gotten more votes if they would have actually been on the ballot or ran longer.
Exactly.
So we've got a couple. And the funny part about the cat world is it's not the boys that are the leaders.
No.
In any cattery, whether it's Maine Coons, whether it's lynx, whether it's Sphinx, ragdolls, tigers, lions, leopards, it's the women that are in charge. It is not the boys.
So what are the characteristics?
It's the alpha. It's the, I put my foot down. Think of it as a old school parent.
Okay.
Very much that way. You're going to do it my way. You're going to do it. This is how we're going to do it. This is what I expect of you. And we go forward from there. So strong, outgoing, authoritative, dedicated. You know, in that world, it's not respect is guaranteed. It's earned. And it's a two-way street. Our oldest, most senior cat, Katie, she's 7. And it's her house. And I just kind of get to live there.
So then if somebody were to adopt a cat, can they count on a Maine Coon breed being an appropriate leader?
Oh, absolutely.
A respected leader.
So Maine Coons, unlike virtually every other cat on the planet, they're not just called the cats of the dog world, or I guess the dogs of the cat world. That's really who they are. They are the weird between a cat and a dog, where they want to be socialized with you. A Maine Coon is not an ornament that sits in the corner that most cats are. Don't touch me, look at me, appraise me from far away. That's not a Maine Coon.
Okay.
A Maine Coon is very much, I want to be part of the family. I want to be up in your business. I want to be in your lap. Try doing a Zoom interview with your Maine Coon in the picture, and it's all about the Maine Coon.
So are Maine Coons high perchers wanting to overlook their kingdom, or do they want to
wherever the
sneak
center
into the
of
grass?
no sneaking. Wherever the center of attention is.
Really?
If that is the kitchen table, if that is in front of the computer screen because you're not giving them airtime in that Zoom call, that's where they're going to be.
So when people groom candidates for office, they usually put them through like a bit of a schooling and how you do this. What is the process of grooming an actual Maine Coon cat, whether it's personality grooming or physical grooming?
So personality grooming, it's actually dual-fold.
Okay.
Because there's inherent nature of the breed itself. The breed is very outgoing, very open, very dog-like, very wanting to be part of your existence. But if they're not also hand-raised, then the nurturing versus naturing, just like in human children, is the exact same scenario. So you could have the most outgoing people lines, and if the child is never exposed to the outside world, they're going to be a very closed, sheltered human.
So are you talking about socialization?
Absolutely.
So then how would you introduce a cat to a household that either had small children, for example?
So the best rule of thumb is looking at it from a cat's perspective.
Okay.
And looking at it from the cat that's already there. A dog is totally different, but we'll talk cat for a minute. If you have an older cat never looks at a kitten as a threat. An older cat looks at a kitten as a project.
Oh.
Welcome to my house. This is how we do things here. I'm in charge.
So takes on a role of a teacher almost.
Mother, father, mentor, teacher. Very much so, the older cat will start grooming the little one. Where you have dynamics, and they're not unsurmountable, but where you have dynamics is you have a 6 or 7-year-old cat. You stop by the shelter and you find a 12 or 13-year-old senior.
Okay.
And you bring that 12 or 13-year-old home. That is a larger dynamic because the senior doesn't want to be bothered by a youngin harassing them because they're older and they just want to do their thing.
Seasoned.
And the 7 or 8-year-old is like, who are you and why am I being replaced?
Oh.
So it's the mentality of a cat versus the mentality of a dog. Dogs are just, I'm happy you're here. And it's, I don't know, like the difference between a preschool age understanding and a doctorate level engineering.
But speaking of a dog, I noticed that you have a harness with a leash on this majestic cat Storm. Do you take this
We
cat
do.
for a walk?
So a lot of Maine Coons are harness trained. In fact, it's a program we offer in our Cattery,
Okay.
so that we can do entry to harness training for the families. And we have a lot of our cats that will put their booties on, their harness on, and go walk in with the family in the evening time alongside the dogs.
So they're comfortable wearing booties on
They
their
are.
paws?
They are.
So they don't get muddy paws
No,
in the
so it's
rain,
really
or-
the temperature of the ground.
So when it gets super hot.
Yeah, or cold.
Or cold. Okay,
Yeah.
so but they're comfortable
They
with
are.
it. And at your cattery, you train them
We do.
to get them accustomed
We
to
do,
that?
if that family is interested in that.
I see.
So, yeah.
What other sorts of training services does your cattery offer?
So we do, predominantly it's the integration of the animal.
Into the family unit.
Well, into understanding what a family unit is. So we kind of have a multi-step process. So our kittens are born one-on-one with mom. Mom will be in her birthing area alone with her litter. And that's pretty much the way it is for about the first 4 weeks, because it's a one-on-one time with mom and her babies. And moms are very protective at that time of their babies and certainly don't want strangers or anybody that they're not comfortable around their babies. No different than a human mother would be. Once they turn about 4 weeks old, then those babies start to understand the world that's going around them. They're eating solid food. Their eyes are open at about 10 days. They're hearing at about 2 weeks. So they're already starting to explore the world around them. They grow at a much faster rate than human babies do. And even the gestation period on cats is only 65 days.
That's really interesting. So that goes into why a Maine Coon is sort of interesting as part of a family unit and how they develop and all that. But why do you think, I want to ask you a slightly different question. Why do you think that the Maine Coon is a symbol of something majestic, and why, for example, Hank ran for office successfully because he was a very large cat?
And a lot of it is the largeness.
Okay, so it's the physical size.
It is a lot of the physical side. It reminds people a lot of the wildcats, of a lion and tiger. In fact, Maine Coons don't meow.
They do not meow.
Chirp. And they make a lot of the same sounds that the tigers and the leopards and the large cats do.
Did you say the cats chirp?
Yeah.
Like a bird?
No, they kind of trill and they chirp in a clicking type sound.
Interesting.
And it's totally different than the what you think of a domestic cat.
I see. Okay.
So a lot of it is they are grand, they are big. We have raised males that are over 35 pounds. That's a big cat. To put that in perspective for you and your audience, a 35-pound Maine Coon is large enough and long enough that they can stand on their hind legs, put their paws up on the counter, and drink from the bottom of the kitchen sink. That's a big cat.
How tall would that be?
Fully
5
stretched
feet?
out, they're over 5 feet in length.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is fascinating.
Right.
So I want to just address our audience. We need to take a very short break, but when we come back, I want you to stay right there. We're going to ask Daniel what we should never do with a Maine Coon breed and find out a little bit more about it. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hank wants your vote for Senate, but what do you really know about Hank? Hank has never released his birth certificate, his tax returns, and has never responded to allegations that he used catnip. He says he's gone to the vet, but there is no record of him serving in any military branch. Would Hank force females to undergo an ultrasound before being spayed? And should a Maine Coon really be running for Senate in Virginia? We need more facts and fewer fat cats in Washington.
And welcome back. Like I promised, I need to ask you some questions, Daniel. What is one of the biggest myths there are, and can you dispel it?
So really, the only myths would be how do you treat them differently than, say, a traditional cat?
As opposed to a giraffe.
or opposed to a 3-pound cat.
Okay,
that
so
most people are used to dealing with. And a lot of it is the things that you shouldn't do when you're first bringing them home.
Which are?
So when they come home at, say, 14 or 15 weeks of age, they're, palm of your hand sitting, 3-5-pound cats. You have to remember that the girls are going to get up to 17 pounds. The boys typically will be 20 to 25 pounds, but can be substantially larger than that. So there's a lot of things that you don't want to do with them as kittens. Same thing with like children. You don't want her to have learned to sleep on your throat when she's 2 pounds.
Right. You don't want to take a nap on the sofa and then have
and
her
allow
curl
her
up
to
on
sleep
top
there.
of you. Right.
Because when she's her weight right now, that's not comfortable.
No, it's not.
You don't want to play with them under the covers with your toes. Because when they're 3 pounds, it's cute and fun. When it's her size and she can literally bite through probably 15 layers of blanket, it's not so fun and cute anymore.
Now, how high can they jump?
The male Maine Coon is a 9-foot vertical leap.
9 feet.
9 feet.
So that brings a new perspective
When
to
you were
cat-proofing your house.
Yes, when you were talking about Maine Coons, typically when you're talking a cat, you cat-proof up to about 5 feet height. When you're talking about a Maine Coon, you have to be looking at every possible place in your home.
Chandeliers.
They're fans.
They can jump on top of the blades of a ceiling fan?
They can. I mean, it's all over the internet. Yeah. So you really have to think everywhere and anywhere that they can be is where they're going to be. Things that they get into that you would never think they get into. So they are outgoing. They will check things out. So we have a whole section in our Go Home book that is cat-proofing your house. And it's probably 25 pages long.
Oh, wow.
It's not a joke.
Okay, so you have to be very serious about taking in this breed.
It's a bigger deal than child-proofing for a toddler. Because toddlers can only get this high.
Right. They don't jump up 9 feet, human toddlers.
For instance, when we moved to the new house that we're in, we had all of the really nice decorative door handles. All my cats can open those up.
They can open the doors.
Yeah. So you had to go to all of the round handles. We had to put child locks on all of the drawers because they'd go through it and peruse it, pick out what they want, and then close the drawer up.
Now, does this breed bond with one person in the family, or do they bond with the entire family?
That depends on the dynamics of the family and the individual personality of the cat.
So it really just depends.
It really does. Typically, there's always going to be one person that's they're closer to. But that doesn't mean that they ignore everybody else. It also depends on the level of excitement in that particular person and how much they are or are not around the cat. So if you've got a 5-year-old that is running around screaming and yelling, any animal may go, yeah,
got it.
You're a little much for even me.
Right.
But Storm, on the other hand, that's who she bonds to. She wants the over-the-top family.
So then that brings up the next question of, in your Cattery, do you do personality
We do.
matchmaking?
We do. Even though we can have you reserve a cat as young as 4 weeks of age. They go home at 14 weeks of age. There's a lot of development between 4 weeks and 14. I mean, yes, it's 10 weeks, but in reality, that's probably 4 years of life in a human. So it's a huge amount of development between those ages, and we really can start to see the type of person that the cat is. And we really refer to them as a person, not just as an animal, because they have their own personality. They have their likes and dislikes, wants and wishes and hopes and dreams, just like humans do.
Right, absolutely.
And some want the older single lady who they're going to be the focus, the center of attention, the diva cat. Some cats want that. Some cats want families with tons of children and may not even pay attention to the parents.
So does it matter if somebody is a frequent traveler and isn't home much?
Nope.
Are they independent
Absolutely.
enough to do that? Or,
They're both. We've got families they're independent. Typically, if the family's going to be gone for extended 10, 12 hours a day, we say a pair is better, because any one...
For the socialization,
well,
keep each other company, or?
Keep each other out of mischief.
Keep each other out of mischief. Oh, so they police each other.
Yes, and they have somebody to interact with. You hear about scratching and tearing up furniture, and all breeds can do that. That comes from being bored.
I see. Okay.
So if they're stimulated and they've got other things going on, especially if it was, say, a brother or sister litter mate, where that's all they know, then they don't care about your chair. They don't care about your sofa. They care about playing around with each other. So it'd be like, leaving a toddler home with markers by itself. Is it going to end well?
So are they better being at home, or can somebody take
Both.
them into a crowd,
So-
public crowds? Like, do you take them on a walk? Do you put them in a little stroller?
She goes to PetSmart all the time.
In the public?
In the public.
So, and she doesn't get...
No, she stops the store, because
does?
Everybody comes over and doesn't care about checking out anymore,
Because she's
they're
twice
coming
the size
over,
of any
right.
other cat.
They're coming over and they want to play with her.
Of course.
We've got an actual truck driver client that has 2 cats, and they are on the 18-wheel with her, with the driver, and they travel around the country. I've got a couple cats with actual rock stars, and they go on tour. So
It just depends.
It depends on what you do with the animal and the accommodations that you make. So they still have
see.
to have their litter and their food and water and all of their creature comforts and their necessities. And if you can accommodate them, I mean, this
There
is
you
her
go.
first time in a studio with new people, and she's very comfortable.
She is definitely adapting nicely. So let me ask you about your name, Noble Maine Cattery, as you have on your smock. Tell me why you picked Maine, M-A-N-E, as opposed to Maine, the
Right,
state.
from the state, which is where Maine Coons originated from.
Okay.
So we chose, it was kind of a whole play on words and kind of having a theme for our program. So Maine Coons are the most noble of the domestic breed. The mane represents the same as with a horse. So Maine Coons are the only domestic cat that actually has a mane.
So a horse has a mane on the back of the
Yes.
head. Show me where the mane
So
is
it would
for
start
this cat.
from underneath here and all the way down her chest plate would be her mane.
Okay.
And it's more prevalent in the males than in the females. Think of it as their beard.
Okay.
So noble with the crown, mane with the mane. Noble mane.
I see. Okay. And that's why your logo
Yeah.
shows a very... So when they go to the salon and get blow dried and all that, do they puff out quite a bit?
They can. Again, at independent fur. And so they're all long hair, but some are silkier, some is thicker. It really just depends on the lineage of that animal. And in particular, we breed the European Maine Coon.
Okay.
So which
they're
is
not
slightly
quite
different than the American Maine Coon.
I see. So tell me how it's different. If it's not as puffy as, say, a ragdoll or a Persian.
So all Maine Coons originated in the state of Maine. Mm-hmm. So they were originally used by sailors on sailing ships with sails and catwalks and whatnot. They were also originally mostly polydactyl, extra toes, so actually opposing thumbs.
So these cats have opposing thumbs.
They do. She doesn't, but some of them do. It's about 35 to 40% of the breed originally was polydactyl.
And does that mean they could grip more?
Depends on, so polydactyls come in two different ways. You can have extra fingers, or you can have opposing thumbs.
I see.
And if they have opposing thumbs, they can pick things up and throw them.
They can?
They can. And the first time you're alone with a cat and you get hit in the head with a ball is a very weird situation.
So the cat may hit you with a ball.
Oh, absolutely. I've got one that's her favorite thing in the world is to, when you're not watching, she throws things at your head.
I see.
But so they originally had the opposing thumbs so that they could climb the ropes and get up into the catwalks and go after mice and keep the mice off the ships. So over the years of that, cats got off in Europe. The ships would go from America to Europe carrying grain and food and other things, and the cats would get off. And breeders in Europe liked different traits than the breeders here. So the staunchier stance, the wider, thicker head, the longer snout, the more, say, bulldogish looking stance. That represents more of the European breed.
I see.
Because of that, too, is their fur is thicker because it's colder. And when we're talking
sense.
Europe, we're really talking Russia, Poland, Czechoslovakia, the East Bloc areas.
I see.
So it can be very cold. So their fur is definitely thicker. They get way warmer than a typical cat would.
Okay.
So things like air conditioning is a must for Maine Coons.
They must have air conditioning.
Must.
Okay.
Because otherwise they're going to get overheated.
Especially in Southern California.
Especially in Southern California. So that goes back to a question you asked me earlier of what can they get into. So one of my first girls was imported from me from Moscow. And she's used to much colder weather. And I remember as a brand new breeder, hadn't even had my first litter yet, she decided one afternoon to jump in the refrigerator because it was nice and cold.
Really?
And I didn't notice. And
you closed the door on the refrigerator?
And thankfully it was only while I was getting my kids their cereal. So when I went to go put the milk away, I opened up the door and Katie was standing on the shelf, happy as all could be, because it was nice and cold.
And she had all her snacks.
And she was set to go. But honestly, as a pet parent, that freaked me out.
Absolutely.
And it was that quick. And you'd never in a million years think, oh, they're going to jump in the refrigerator, or they're going to jump in the dryer, or a drawer, or that's the things that the Maine Coons do.
Well, I have to say, we have had a fabulous conversation, and he has so much knowledge, Daniel does, that I think we might just have to ask him back for another episode. So remember that Hank the cat was not only appropriate for running for Senate, but you also could have your own little politician right in your own home. And it's a key factor about why animals might make a very good companion. Maybe you want to have a secretary of nap time in your own little government in your house. So we'll see you next time. And until we bond again.